Look, here's also something that we need to talk about. Look, it's very easy to but to mitigate the damage being done to the American people. Now, what did he say? We're gonna force companies to pay $15 an hour. By the way, the same companies that they forced to close. That worked like a charm, didn't it? Just look at the economic results of red states and blue states. For example, compare New York to Texas or Florida. You can debate about the spread of the virus, even though it looks like red states did relatively better than blue states. Though you can say, okay, maybe it's a wash. There can be no debate at all. None. Just to be clear. None. There's no both sides of the issue as far as the disastrous economic ramifications that happen with shutting down businesses. His remedy now is to, what? Force businesses to pay more. Okay, there are things that we can do right now to solve this issue as it relates to the average American, which he doesn't want to discuss. By the way, use the hashtag Biden fact check. That's the promo code, $20 off at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. We're doing this stream live tonight, live fact checking, a lot that goes into producing it. We make no money on YouTube. Here's what we can do. Open up our own oil reserves. Now, not only does that help the United States, right? Open up not only our own oil reserves, but open up, as opposed to shutting down the Keystone pipeline, open up our own natural gas, oil reserves, and even clean coal technology. Not only does it allow us to help our own citizens as it deals with gas prices, not only does it allow us to be independent, but like we saw in 2016 under Donald Trump, for the first time in modern American history, allows us to be a net exporter of oil. What does that mean, being a net exporter of oil? Means that we can send out more oil than we bring in. Hey, who would we be sending that to? Could that benefit people in the Ukraine? Could that benefit people in Europe, particularly people who might be dependent on oil supplies like the Nord Stream pipeline? Right, this is the Nord Stream 2. I'm assuming there's a 1. I have no idea.
It was the first effort.
Yeah, by the way, I have no idea. But what is it? Russia is responsible for, is it 10%? Is it 1%, 10% of the world's oil supply? But they're one of the single biggest producers of oil for all of Europe. I can find this any second. You guys can bring it up. I don't exactly know what the number is, but the point is, we're now at $100 a barrel for oil per day.
Yeah.
And they're talking about 3 days supply of oil.
And we were already at a high gas price anyway.
We were already at a high gas
oil
price.
was going up. This wasn't just a Russia thing.
When the United States focuses on its own interests, it can benefit the rest of the world. And you know what? It's a perfect analogy. People say you need to put on your own oxygen mask before you help the person next to you, right, in the plane. That's you as a passenger. Okay. There is no more clear-cut example of the pilot than the United States. So if you're a passenger, you need to put on your own oxygen mask first so you can help the person next to you. The pilot certainly should put his own oxygen mask on first. How do you know that we're the pilot? Well, we're the most powerful country in the world, not only the free world. We were paying all of NATO, more than the rest of the countries combined, 4 years. How do you know that the United States is the pilot? Because when shit goes wrong in the Ukraine or across Europe, they look to the United States, the pilot. So guess what? Open our own energy reserves here so we can help ourselves, and that allows us to help nations overseas. Also, when we're talking about energy, so we open up our own resources. And this is the key. You can't say wars for oil, right? No FX, rock against Bush, and now act like that's not a huge component here with Russia and the Ukraine. Of course, it has to do with energy. Something else that we need to be doing is looking at the most effective forms of energy. He won't talk about this because the Democratic Party has maligned it for years. Nuclear energy is not only zero carbon emissions, just to be clear, entirely clean, but there have been 3 accidents, and this is what the media decided to, of course, sexify, glorify. 3 Mile Island, right? Chernobyl and Fukushima. And in those cases, particularly Fukushima, almost all the deaths came from the actual evacuation plan. Yeah. There is no form of energy that has a lower amount of deaths per kilowatt hour produced of energy than nuclear energy. And it is something that we can use. It is something that is effectively renewable. It is something that actually creates very little waste. And it is something that is available to us right now with no carbon emissions. To see more clear-cut examples, look at the difference between France and Germany. Look who cut their carbon emissions. France, primarily nuclear energy, versus Germany, who went to renewables, wind and solar, and not only did they increase their carbon emissions, they would have brownouts. They would have to sell energy at a net negative cost. So no one is saying we wouldn't like to move to all electric everything, but right now it needs to be powered by something. And right now we're powered by oil that comes from places overseas, as you have seen. By the way, up until last week, well, this week, former Vice President Joe Biden signed off on the Nord Stream pipeline going through Russia, when one of the first actions he had taken as president was shutting down the Keystone pipeline here in North America. So up until last week, he supported us being dependent on foreign oil. So if we want to go electric in the future and you believe that it runs on sunshine and farts, accept reality now, it requires energy. Well, where does that come from? Do you want it coming from the United States? Or do you want it coming from Russia? Do you want it coming from Saudi Arabia? Then, do you want it coming from zero carbon emission nuclear energy that we can use here in a safe, reliable manner? Or do you want nothing? Because that's what you'll get with wind and solar when you're dealing with that kind of infrastructure. Just look at Solyndra. Look at these companies that the government has tried to shove down your throat. There are things we can do right now to make us less dependent on the rest of the world and tyrants, as former Vice President Joe Biden put it, like Vladimir Putin, right now. Yep. But he doesn't want to do that. Up until last week, he supported buying more oil from Putin.
Absolutely. And you know how I know that nuclear is totally safe? They put it in things that are getting shot at. The entire point, put it on a sub, put it on a carrier, those things are targets. I mean, if it was so dangerous,
wasn't Chernobyl like one guy's arrogance anyway?
Well, it was the Russian. It was the Russian system,
but it was like wasn't it just like one guy?
It was horrible oversight with the Russians.
like horrible oversight to begin with.
Terrible oversight.
Yeah, which basically started with a
they didn't want
measuring
the rest of the
contest.
World. Yeah,
exactly. The domino effect.
Lots of vodka.
Yeah.
Lots of vodka, and then people had 3 testicles. We don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they necessarily had 3 testicles. Some of them are starting off with 2.5.
Actually, the button to shut it down was at the other end of Putin's table, and so it took a while to get.
He's like, why did they have 250 on the table? I can't reach easy button.
They were in a meeting, and they were like, the button's at the end.
Somebody go get it.
Can you slide button like Heinz ketchup in Jim Carrey commercial from 80s?
This is actually a fact. Before Chernobyl, they had regular-sized tables.
Did they actually?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
It was normal.
He just walked in. He's like, what happened to my pine wood?
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.